Hello and welcome to And the Runner-Up Is. This week on the show we're talking the 1930-1931 Best Actress race at the Academy Awards, where Marie Dressler won for her performance in Min and Bill. But why did she beat fellow nominees Marlene Dietrich, Irene Dunne, Anne Harding, and Norma Shearer? We'll explore all this and more on today's episode of And the Runner-Up Is. Hello and welcome back to And the Runner-Up Is. I'm your host, Kevin Jacobson, here to break down the fourth year of Best Actress at the Oscars, which comprised the year 1930 and 1931. So we'll be discussing why Marie Dressler won, why the losers lost, and who we think was the runner-up of this Best Actress race. And my guest today has been heard on a few bonus episodes of this show. She is a podcaster for the Community Rewatch podcast, as well as Untitled Cinema Gals. Welcome back, Chelsea Eichholz.
Hi, thanks for having me on the big show now.
Yes, you've been promoted. You're on you're featured and now you're in the main cast.
I know, I feel like a big kid now. It's like I'm ready to talk about all these.
Yes, and quite a early year as well. Are you a fan of old Hollywood in this general era?
I'm a fan of old Hollywood. I gotta say, the early 30s have some blind spots, but this was a fun time to fill out some of those gaps.
Yes, good, I'm glad. Well, before we really jump in and talk about this year, I ask this of every guest. So when it comes to Best Actress at the Oscars, I want to know kind of your taste, your preference. So my first question for you is, what is your favorite Best Actress win of all time?
This is tough. I made a spreadsheet. I went through.
Oh my goodness.
I did. And of course it's on brand for me to say Audrey Hepburn, because of course. But
yes.
An old one I love, obviously Joan Crawford. I think Mildred Pierce is a perfect film. It still slaps all these years later. And a more recent one, I love Brie Larson's win for Room. I think it's something super different, and especially during recent times. So it's a really great little film.
Yeah, I like that you kind of covered a lot of different eras right there. And my other question for you is, on the flip side, what is your most heartbreaking loss in Best Actress? A time where you were mad or surprised or disappointed that a performance that you maybe loved didn't end up winning the Oscar.
Oh my goodness. The short list for this was like 15 names, so I'll keep it very short.
The long list, I guess.
Yes. Oh goodness. Angela Bassett is number one. She should have won. I have like a whole, if I could go recreate Best Actress, I would, and Angela Bassett would win. Don't worry, Glenn Close would also win in this scenario.
Thank you.
But then if we go back in time, Celia Johnson for Brief Encounter. I just love her so much. She's wonderful. And then Irene Dunne for The Awful Truth, just because I love rom-coms. And she stars opposite Cary Grant, who also, we're not talking about Best Actors, but he should have won.
Yeah, and wasn't even nominated. How rude is that?
It is so mean.
I think the Academy was jealous because he was too good looking and too good at his job.
He made it look way too easy. He is way too good looking. Canonically the hottest man.
Yes, we know this. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later when we talk about Holiday, and not that holiday, but another holiday. We'll maybe do some comparisons there. But yes, those are some very, very good choices. And it is very funny because nobody that I've had on so far has heard other people's choices for this question segment, and I am finding that there are a lot of people who are sort of saying that the late 80s, early 90s era was a bit of a mess in terms of, you know, if you could go back, you would probably rearrange certain things in a way that would make everyone happier. So,
Oh, I would. It's a giant
yeah.
puzzle. Just let me go back in time. I will fix so
Yes.
much for us.
Yes, and the world would have been a better place.
So much better.
Yes. Well, let's just get right to it. The 4th Academy Awards. So, a few notes for this year. Once again, the number of nominated performances in this category has changed. This year, we finally have a solid 5, and that would become standardized with the decades to come. There are a few years after this where it goes down to 3 for some reason, and then it also just goes back up to 6, which is sort of strange, and then it finally settles down to 5, 4 or 5 years after this. But this is our first year of 5 actresses, all with 1 performance nominated, so that's a bit of history there. The nominees were Marlene Dietrich for Morocco, Marie Dressler for Min and Bill, Irene Dunne for Cimarron, Anne Harding for Holiday, and Norma Shearer for A Free Soul, with the Oscar winner being Marie Dressler in Min and Bill. So, Chelsea, what were your overall thoughts on these performances taken collectively?
Collectively, it does remind me of something contemporary where you have some of them, you're like, why are they nominated this year? There was probably somebody else. But then you have I think there's a couple really decent performances in there, and then a middle of the road one. So it's a nice all over the place, kind of like what I'm used to these days. So it was very reminiscent.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty decent lineup. Far from my favorite, I'll say that, but what does make this unique for me so far in this Best Actress journey is that I don't really have a runaway favorite in this category where it's like I easily would have picked someone from this bunch. But at the same time, I also appreciate this lineup for at least having some variety. We talked about this off air already, but the past 2 years I've covered have been a lot of domestic dramas about women around the same age, 20s, 30s, who are dealing with romance, they're scorned, and none of them seem to have jobs, and there's a lot of overlap, I guess. Whereas here, yes, some of those themes that I mentioned are still present, but they're also very distinguishable from each other. So, they all kind of have a different style, the characters they play, their lives are a little more complicated. Also, the other aspect is that we're slowly figuring out how to use sound, which certainly gives the actors more freedom to make stronger choices, and there's the transitions that feel less like jarring jump cuts and you can actually hear what they're saying, which is nice. It's a nice step up from what we've been discussing. And then the other thing, you have 2 examples here of films nominated for multiple acting categories for the first time with Cimarron and A Free Soul. So I certainly think the Academy is slowly starting to take shape with what it would come to be. And then ultimately you have a winner here who is incredibly unique in Marie Dressler, who became this unexpected movie star in her 60s. So yeah, I'm excited to explore how she became such a success and also how she won this Oscar.
Yeah, totally.
Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into these individual performances, starting with the losing nominees. And what better way to start than with a true icon? Let us discuss Marlene Dietrich in Morocco.
What a dream.
Relaxed sigh. Yes. So, yeah, I mean, Marlene Dietrich, she starred in a German film called The Blue Angel, which really launched her into some international success. And Paramount became very interested in her. She signed a contract with them to do films in Hollywood. Basically, from what I read, they thought that she would be their version of Greta Garbo, was the thinking.
That was the plan.
Yeah. She played a cabaret singer in that film, and here in Morocco, she's working with her frequent collaborator, Joseph von Sternberg, who also directed her in like 5 or 6 other films. And she's kind of playing the same type of character in Morocco. So the opening of the film, it really introduces her as the beautiful stranger, which is really mirroring her own arrival in Hollywood. She had a real Stars Born moment at the premiere, dressed to the nines. The film is about this guy, this legionnaire named Tom Brown, played by Gary Cooper, who is off duty and comes back to Morocco, where he meets this nightclub singer, Amy Jolly, Marlene Dietrich, who has a fun gender bending act, and he's just fascinated by her. And then there's also this guy La Bessiere, played by Adolphe Menjou, who's a rich guy who doesn't really have a lot of chemistry with Amy Jolly, but really wants to be with her. She does not really like him all that much, but he's very wealthy. So Tom and Amy have this kind of flirting relationship, but he's also involved with another woman. So things are complicated and messy, but by the end, she decides she wants to be with Tom and just follow him out to the desert. This is a very memorable introduction of a movie star. Chelsea, what do you think of Morocco and her big Hollywood debut?
Oh my goodness. Can you, like, just for the time, such an introductory scene of her just getting dressed up and then just going out there and singing. And I imagine for the time it was probably very wild to see so many people in the background, and for its time, like, somewhat complex camera composition and moving around and actual sound and singing on camera. So I just have to imagine people were having such a good time with this one. I mean, the plot is, sure, whatever. It's not a real thing. Like, I call it Casablanca if they took only, like, one of the 20 layers of that film and placed it over
pretty much
beautiful people. And yeah, I don't know. I had a really good time with this. It's not my favorite of her films by any means, but I don't know. I'm glad it's here. It's a good time.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. What were your thoughts on just her performance as a whole?
It actually felt very natural and like something we'd see today from a movie star. Like, it's very restrained. It doesn't feel forced or even stagey like some of the other performers in the category. And I get that it's of its time, but I don't know. She felt like she blends in with, like, contemporary sensibilities, and maybe that's why she's stood the test of time a little bit more, because she's not just saying words at a screen. She's actually living in the moment a little bit. And I don't know. It was a lot of fun, and she just oozes so much charisma.
She just has this effortless confidence to her. This is a performance that has a lot of style and a certain sensibility to it that really grabs your attention right away, just because of her look, first of all, how she's styled, how she speaks. She really is that kind of beautiful stranger archetype. And then her the big nightclub performance is one of those things that I imagine was just instantly iconic. I love in the beginning when the crowd is booing her, probably because of her dressing in the tuxedo, I would imagine, but her face in that moment, it's like she's not even deterred by it. It doesn't bother her. She's pretty unfazed. And I think a big part of that is that she has such confidence that she knows that she'll win them over with her performance. And it's almost like this meta thing where she's also kind of introducing herself to Hollywood, essentially, with this performance. And by the end, I do think you're totally won over by her.
Oh, for sure. It's just like from the moment you see her and just her confidence and how she doesn't really care what the people around her think, you're on board for the ride. And I saved this film for last just to watch. And I'm like, oh, this is a great way to go to bed right now. I'm just watching it in bed and being like, I wonder what she would be like with an Instagram account. I think she'd have a lot of fun with this. She'd take advantage of the situation, like the actress and the character. I gotta say, though, Gary Cooper, he is the tapioca pudding of a man. Like, the complete opposite of charisma in this.
Yeah. I mean, I usually take notes when I'm watching these films, and the only thing I had to say about Gary Cooper is just very dull.
I literally wrote down Gary Cooper equals sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Sure, right. I mean, I read this quote from Inside Oscar of Gary Cooper talking about his experience on this film, and I'm just like, okay, buddy. You know, because he says it's bad enough that I don't understand a thing he's talking about the director, Joseph von Sternberg, but I don't even know what's going on in this movie.
Oh, jeez.
And I think that's kind of apparent in the performance.
Yeah, you can tell. It just feels like they found a warm body of a somewhat handsome dude and was like, just stand here and let her just be charming, and you just stand there and be tall.
Yes, be tall and generically handsome. Yes.
Generic as all get out.
Well, my favorite part, I mean, obviously we can talk about the kiss with the woman, which is incredibly transgressive for 1930, but I don't know, it's not played like it's a shock kind of thing, like, oh no, what is she doing? It's just like fun, which I do think helps this hold up a little bit.
For sure, it doesn't feel like anything weird or, again, stagey. Right. It just feels like all these men are looking at her and so transfixed, but she's just going to focus on this one woman out in the crowd, and it's just like fun and silly and throwaway, and it says a lot about her character, again, that she doesn't care what they think and she's just gonna do what she wants to do. She gets consent in it as well, like, in a way, like talking to the woman in the crowd, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty rad.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite part of that is actually after she's kissed her and she kind of flicks her top hat up in this very cool way.
Oh my goodness. I mean, the way she is just shouting gay rights right there.
Yes, truly. She radiates gay rights in this. Which is why it's kind of like a bummer that she ends up with the most white bread Americana guy with Gary Cooper.
Oh, truly the dullest man in everything, but mostly this.
Yes, I'm glad we're on the same page on this. I know he has his fans, and they have voiced their dissension when I have expressed my distaste for him, but
y'all, it's
not
fine.
One of my faves.
Gary Cooper, he's doing fine. He had a great life. He got 2 Oscars. He's fine.
Yeah,
he does not need us.
Exactly. But I don't know. Just her stage presence. I mean, her stage presence and her screen presence. It's just off the charts. She's also wonderful in her little song about apples.
Oh,
when she's
so
when
good.
she's selling the apples.
She's singing, I just got transfixed and forgot what the movie was about. And I'm just like, maybe this is why she was nominated. People didn't actually pay attention to the story. It was just her.
I think that is a part of it, I would say. But she really commands the room. I'd say those are the highlights of the film. The problem is they happen very early on in the film, and I don't think it quite reaches those heights again. You know, not really of any fault of her own. It's just because the film becomes so much about Tom that she just doesn't get a whole lot of opportunities to do much in terms of reaching those heights again later on, except for kind of just pine for him and feel miserable when she's being wooed by the other guy.
Yeah, it kind of just becomes a generic love triangle, and anytime it went off to Gary Cooper, I found myself looking at my phone, which is never a good sign. I usually try to hide it away. I don't know, the other guy, he wasn't too bad. I mean, he was just a boring rich guy, but he's a little bit cuter. I mean, thought he had a more modulated performance than Cooper did.
Certainly. That's very true. Hard not to.
Yeah.
But, I like that also we get these hints about her past with other men, but again, that only really happens, you know, during her conversation with Tom towards the beginning of the film, and she definitely plays that mystery and that elusiveness to her very well. And I guess to compare it to Garbo, it's very similar to how Greta Garbo in Anna Christie had that sense of a wild past, and now she's just haunted by it, and that sort of makes her mysterious, and now maybe she wants to settle down with someone. And then, much like in that film, I think the most interesting part of the performance is at the beginning. But I think there you can at least see where they seem to be in a similar place as people, her and Tom. She just has a natural charisma that does do a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to the second half of the film. I do like their little salute that they have together.
It's,
their
again,
little
just
sign
so
off.
charming, so cute,
Yeah.
and just an example of subtlety in film, because there's not a lot of subtlety in this group of films, and I felt like we got the
Yeah,
most from that, like this one.
that is very true. Yeah. I do think she plays how miserable she is around the Adolf Menjou character really well. I mean, the level of total disinterest just radiates off of the screen.
It just cracked me up how she was just so visibly not into him, even though he's just this very well-meaning, nice man. Just, he's nothing spectacular, and I guess as Roy Kent says, you just want to feel like you've been struck by lightning.
Yes. Oh, wow. What a reference.
Yes.
Topical.
Yes.
Sort of. I mean, this
Sort
will come
of.
out in like October, but you know. Yeah, I mean her sort of realization late in the film that Tom's troupe is coming back, and then her like suddenly having that peaking of interest and that feeling of desperation, I think she plays really well. We finally see like her actually externalizing some emotions again after just spending so much of the film bottled up with emotion. So, I mean, I do think this is a very well modulated performance in general, and that I appreciate Joseph von Sternberg as well for trusting his muse here, because that's what she was, to, even though it's a character that is very elusive and they're playing into that, he definitely trusts her, I think, to find the emotion and not have to go at a 10 all the time, like some of these other performances.
Oh, for sure. Again, it just feels like a person you might actually know, even though it's kind of a wacky situation like she's in her life. And I really appreciate that. I think Sternberg, he's able to actually make it feel like it's a film that lasts just in how it's constructed and shot. I really like the cinematography, even though some of it's very simple. I think it does help push the film forward and help, like, with her character, like just how she's shot, it says so much about her. So I don't know, again, they're iconic together for a reason.
Yeah, I have seen some people say that Joseph von Sternberg really relied on those really glamorous close-ups of Marlene Dietrich a little too much, not just here but in their other films together. But I do like the level of sort of heightened realism, I guess, that he was able to create with her in his films, where even though I agree that she feels like a regular person, she also has an element to her that feels kind of otherworldly.
Oh, for sure.
In a way that is very appealing for cinema. I mean, there's a quote that I read from the critic Kenneth Tynan, who said, "She has sex but no positive gender. Her masculinity appeals to women and her sexuality to men."
Oh, I mean, it's so true.
Yeah.
That just nails it. It's why we think of her so much to this day. And, like, yeah, he relies on those close-ups, but he knows what he has, and it's like, why not use one of her superpowers? I mean, you have to take advantage of all of her strengths, and she has so many.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that is what made her so appealing as a movie star, where she's obviously a striking woman, but also a woman who is projecting a lot of confidence in herself, and also just that sense of freedom, you know? So if anything, what she was able to do with Joseph von Sternberg is to create these really powerful images and feeling, rather than something that's like very writerly and having to have these long monologues to draw out those feelings and emotion, if that makes sense.
Oh, completely agree.
Yeah. I mean, you could compare her to Garbo, as many people have, who was certainly beloved. But I think what Marlene Dietrich did was just have a coolness to her that made her fun to watch, compared to Garbo, who I think certainly has her own charisma and has her own style, but is a little more reserved, you know, maybe a lot more reserved compared to Marlene Dietrich.
I completely agree. She has the cool fun factor, and even though they're both like mysterious international gals, I feel like you get to, I don't know, it's just like the cool girl factor of Marlene. you just, like, you want to be her friend, you want to be her. Garbo, she is reserved. I love her so much, but it's just a different kind of energy, and it's not always as welcoming.
Right. In fact, she projected to stay away often, which is fine. That's within her right, of course.
I completely respect that. I wish people would not bother me as much as they do. I get the energy.
Yes. I will say that I do wish that they did a film together called Mysterious International Gals.
Oh my goodness. Okay, when I get this time travel down, first, Glenn wins her Oscar. Yes. I will fix that for you. And then we will do this.
Wow. I think the world needs that. Both of those things, actually. So.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, maybe Greta Garbo is the better actress of the two, like dramatically, but I feel like I'm definitely more drawn to watching and rewatching what Marlene Dietrich does. So that's really fun. Their next film together was Dishonored, which premiered that April, so she was still actually very present in the discussion for Morocco heading into the Oscars, which I think certainly helped her campaign as much as possible. She was definitely more open with the public, if we want to continue the Garbo comparisons. Garbo, like we said, didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Oh, so, absolutely not. She's like, I am not talking to you. Get out of my house. Go away.
Yes, it's like the Katharine Hepburn picture where she's holding the flowers and it says, please go away. Which is my favorite picture ever.
It's so good.
So this was from the New York Times. It says, Miss Dietrich bears a resemblance to Greta Garbo, but her acting hardly rivals that of the Swedish star. She has, however, an ingratiating personality, and one might be justified in presuming that if she had been given more rein by Mr. von Sternberg, her work might have been more satisfactory. For her gamut of emotions here consists only of gazing intently, smiling, and looking languid. She, like the other players in this film, is handicapped by the economy and dialogue, which results in many an uncomfortable pause between two performers. So, not the most positive.
Not really. It's like they got a little taste of the sound from actresses, and it seems like they wanted more talking.
Yes. I think that is actually a big part of that, because I have certainly read a lot of reviews of this time period who take special mention of like an actress's diction and like their ability to project.
Yeah, I was reading about that for some of them, and I'm like, well, some things age well, like better than others then.
Yeah. So even if the film wasn't always the best received with reviews, there were some who really, really were taken with it. It was a pretty solid box office success, and I think all of that, plus her becoming such an icon, her fashion alone, I think, really propelled her to a lot of stardom in America. She wore slacks instead of like the traditional, more feminine garb, and I think that was a big part of making her such a well-known presence.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Her fashion is just a whole nother podcast. It's just so gorgeous.
Yeah. It's genuinely iconic and trend-setting.
It really is. Like, so many of her outfits just in the film you could wear today, and they'd be so cool.
I read that actually it was the movie that saved Paramount. That's a very big thing, and especially that's something that the Academy tends to appreciate, especially in the 20th century at least, when a film or a performance really crosses over and becomes really popular. Yeah, I think she had a very clear slot here for herself in this nominations.
I mean, just casually saving a movie studio that's still around today, just super casual. You're welcome, Tom Cruise.
Exactly. Without Marlene Dietrich, we wouldn't have Tom Cruise.
There you go.
Some have said it. I do also like this other quote that Marlene Dietrich said about America, which she had a love-hate relationship with America, understandably so.
That's fair.
Yeah, she criticized American women. She said, American women talk always of their jewelry. They go to parties and drink cocktails, but it is such hollow enjoyment. It makes me miserable.
That is so relatable. Can I get a shirt that says that? We're gonna make those.
Yeah. Where is the lie?
Oh my goodness. It's so true.
I mean, yeah, that's Marlene Dietrich for you. She's an icon. I'm really sad that this is the only time we can talk about her because this is her only nomination.
I know. It's like why I wanted this episode specifically. It's so silly. Like she's great in this movie, but come on. She deserved a few more nominations. That's getting ahead of ourselves, though.
Yeah, we got a few questions about this, and we'll certainly talk about some of those other nominations she should have received. But let's move on to a performance that is kind of on the other end of the spectrum, I would say. Not necessarily in quality, but just in terms of like type of film and iconography. Irene Dunne in Cimarron.
Yeah, Cimarron.
I'll just say, first off, excited to start talking about Irene Dunne, who I absolutely adore for The Awful Truth, as you mentioned earlier. I think she's a great screwball comedy performer, but Cimarron is not a screwball comedy. What is interesting about Irene Dunne compared to some of the others that we've discussed on this show is that she didn't even really have a huge career in silent film before this. This was only her second film. She was in Broadway musicals before she was discovered by RKO, and they signed her on to make a film called Leathernecking. And then here's her very next film, the Best Picture winner, Cimarron, and it's a lead role. And she really campaigned very hard to play this part because she was still pretty unknown, and she had a sense, from what I read, that Hollywood musicals were starting to fall out of favor, and she wanted to prove herself, and she wanted to do something more dramatic, and she made the right connections. Apparently they were concerned that she wouldn't be able to play the scenes later on where she's playing older. So she actually hired a makeup artist to age her up, and then they took pictures and showed it to the executives. Like, here, see, I can do this. So it was a really hard-fought battle for her, and she won the part. Good for her, you know?
You know, we love a go-getter. We love it so much. I do love Irene Dunne so much. But yeah.
Yeah. I do wonder if you love her in this film. I do want to just get to a description of this film. I mean, I hate that I had to watch this again, but
I'm so sorry you did. I am so sorry.
It's my least favorite Best Picture winner, and that is including Crash. So the film is a big old-fashioned epic, and she's playing Sabra Cravat, who is the wife of a guy named Yancey, who has huge ambitions, and the film takes place around the turn of the 20th century, where the Oklahoma land rush is taking place, and white people are everywhere trying to claim land from Native Americans, and they're the heroes, ? And this guy Yancey just wants in on that, so eventually they settle in Oklahoma, where he sets up a newspaper business, but then he gets bored, so he goes off to find more land. And Sabra is just sort of left there to run everything back home. And they also have 2 kids, so she has to raise them too, as kind of a single mother, basically. Occasionally he comes back, you know, and then she's relieved, and then he says, you know what, I gotta go explore the country again. So, you know, she gives him like a little bit of pushback, but it has no effect on him, and he goes out anyway, and she does more suffering back home. So she has this very powerful newspaper business, and also is keeping his name as the editor, seemingly out of stubbornness or traditional values or something. But then she later becomes a congresswoman, the first woman in Congress from the state of Oklahoma. So I don't know, she gets her props for that. But then the film ends basically making it clear that Yancey's contributions were more important than Sabra's, and that's basically where we leave the film. Also, I should mention that Sabra is very racist against Native Americans for a great majority of the film, and then suddenly becomes less racist.
There's literally
in the
just
last, 10
one
minutes.
scene where she's not. Just one moment, one sentence, if we will.
Yeah, pretty much. I really don't like this film at all. It's, like I said, my least favorite Best Picture winner of all time. Number one, it's incredibly dull. Number two, there's just racism at the very foundation of the film. Every non-white character is portrayed as inferior or just straight up not given any material. It seems as though we're like expected to admire this man who went out, and even if he had to neglect his wife, look at all the greatness of what he did, stealing this land from the Native Americans. And then it sort of has the gall to be多progressive, where Yancey is now like the defender of all minorities and downtrodden people, and Sabra is breaking ground, and now she's not racist anymore for reasons we aren't shown. It doesn't put in any of the work to earn that, to show us that change. It's just, this movie sucks. Chels, before we even dive into Irene Dunne and her performance, did you have any other thoughts on the film itself?
First note, not a fan. Second note, this is trash. I hate this film. I am apologies to all people of color that participated. I am so sorry you had to deal with this. I'm so glad it's a difficult film to find. Like, I love film preservation. I'm very pro, but this one could be lost to time and I would be completely fine. I hate it. It's awful. It's so long.
Yeah. By far the longest of these films.
And I watched a whole movie in the middle of watching this. I'm not gonna lie, because I was working from home and I put this on, and then I saw that you retweeted like TCM, Theodora Goes Wild, and I'm like, hey, a good Irene Dunne. I'm gonna watch this.
Wow. Perfectly timed.
It was so perfect. I'm like, I need a break from this garbage. I'm gonna watch something funny.
Yes, need to see Irene Dunne in like a good setting. Yeah. But I mean, as far as Irene Dunne, I think it's tough because a lot of the performances I've been talking about so far have just totally dominated their films, and they're like these big star vehicles for the lead actress. And, even if it's like a co-lead situation like Marlene Dietrich in Morocco, like they make such a big impression that you could still call them big showcase leading performances. Here, she is playing the suffering wife, and that's basically it.
Yeah, let me read some of my notes. Aside from being super racist, it's a dull film and she doesn't have much to do. Some parts are well modulated. She's not flat. She just has nothing of substance that isn't super dang racist and awful.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much that.
Yeah, I mean...
The film, it does devote some time to her, but it almost feels, I don't know if this is how you feel too, but it almost feels like obligatory. It feels like they sort of include it because that's how the book was written.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem like they're really concerned about her at all.
Not at all. And on the second half of the movie, I got on the Wikipedia just to read about the production history, help time pass. And it's like, oh, the parts where he disappears from the book, we don't see his perspective. So we wanted to do the same in the film so it would make us miss him. And I'm like, one, I did not ever miss him. But also, you're giving her nothing to do in these long stretches where he's gone. Like, she's staring at a newspaper and being like, just looking at his name as editor. And I'm like, this scene is going on for so long. What is going on? What is the point of any of this?
Yeah, and it's really repetitive what she's asked to do, unfortunately. I mean, I think she does a decent enough job with the material. Like, obviously, she does have more to work with in that second half than the first half, which, I mean, truly, like, any competent actress could have played the role in the first half of the film.
Any warm body that could just sit and stare and look sad or just, like, put a hand on the shoulder could have done the first half. And then, I don't know, it's hard to judge. Like, I don't think she's ever bad in anything, but you can tell when she has, again, nothing to do. When she is doing something, she's just shouting, and it never feels like histrionic or anything. It just feels like shouting, and I don't know.
Yeah, she's definitely asked to portray a lot of frustration, with him always leaving the family behind, feeling like she's less appreciated than her husband. but it's sort of like the film is doing the same thing to her, ironically.
Yeah, it's like, do they want him to escape this naggy racist woman, or do they want him to return to his like long-suffering wife? It's like, I don't know whose side we're supposed to be on, if anybody's, and you're just never invested in these characters because they all kind of suck.
Yeah, I'm on nobody's side.
Yeah.
Truly.
And none of them are, like, bad enough to where they're fun and good. It's not like Batman Returns where you're cheering for Michelle Pfeiffer to win.
Exactly.
They all just are so boring and suck. And this film just needs to not.
It just feels like she barely has a character to really work with outside of the concerned looks and the occasional frustration and, you know, just a dash of racism against Native Americans, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you want to earn this ending of her becoming a congresswoman and changing her views on Native Americans, you have to put in the work to get there. And the film gets so distracted by all of the Yancey stuff and the grandstanding and the gunfighting and all of that she just gets totally overshadowed. And it's like, unfortunately, because I love her, I can't even really talk about this very much because there's nothing to really say.
There's nothing to say. I can say Theodora Goes Wild. She's great. We love a comedy debut. You're going to have so much fun talking about that one later. It's shorter than this one. This is just, there's nothing here. Like, I don't know, it's just a waste of time. She has one sentence where she's bragging about her son being married to the chief's daughter, and it's like, oh, congrats. That's your least racist moment in this whole film.
It's just lip service. I mean, I do think she's better than Richard Dix, who plays Yancey, and is totally hamming it up.
He is just like, oh, so he's just learning how to speak for films. Got it. He is
yeah, pretty much.
Literally preaching to everyone about everything, and you just want him to be quiet.
That's another thing. I really despise the scene where he comes back and he goes to defend Dixie Lee, who is like the town prostitute, because it's like the right thing to do, where yes, it's, you know, she's in this kind of witch hunt against Dixie Lee, who is the prostitute in the town. So, you know, Sabra is in the wrong in this scenario, but there's something about the way that all plays out that feels weirdly like unnecessary and hateful against Sabra, where he just totally humiliates her by doing this big grandstanding courtroom thing, and then when they're back home, he spells out this whole morality lesson to her, like, oh, maybe Dixie Lee didn't have a good upbringing, so that's why she had to choose this life, and, you know, Sabra, you were brought up differently, and maybe Dixie Lee would have been like you if she had your opportunities. And Sabra's like, oh wow, I never thought of it like that. Like, what are we doing?
It is it just is such, I get it's the early 1930s, I get it, yes. But it has no actual sense of morality. It's just trying to actively preach and preach and preach, and every time it happens, it's like, are you trying to make us hate the protagonist even more? Like, what is your game here? What are you... This film, I feel like each scene is not in conversation with each other. You could just take out whole chunks of this and it would be the exact same film. And that's like an area that they could have just cut that part, the whole Dixie Lee part, because I don't know.
Because it's like
she's not a real character.
Minutes.
It is so long. Yeah. It felt like 30.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is a film that feels very based on a novel.
Yeah, and they kept in every sentence and paragraph and chapter.
Yeah. We've spent a lot of time talking about the film, but I think her final scene that she has, where she's a lot older, she's like 40 years older or something, and she has the terrible hair and makeup. It does feel like she's speaking differently, like a little bit more deliberateness, a little bit slower in her voice, which I think is more convincing of her having aged compared to all that hair and makeup, which is like ridiculous. But I don't know, I did get the sense that she was at least thinking about how a woman like this would speak and sort of her body language in that moment. I mean, I'm really sort of picking at scraps here to find
Yeah, it's like I
some
can
good stuff
totally
to talk
see
about from
that.
her.
It's like, oh, I can see where she's acting like she has aged and has all these years of wisdom because she's very young when they film this, and then she has to span like 40 years. But goodness, it's like I can see her making choices, and I can appreciate that she made choices because a lot of her co-stars are very one note.
Right. At least she's giving us something.
She is trying her best with the nothing she has.
So there's that. This review from Variety pretty much actually sums up what we were talking about, which is kind of funny. But it says, Miss Dunne does nicely enough in a role of a loving wife and mother, which does not permit her to be much else. What she later accomplishes in a political way is suggested rather than acted.
I mean, they nailed it. Good on Variety. Good job over there.
Yeah, this is not a contemporary review. This was from the time period, which you would think like, oh, everyone seemed to have loved it because it won Best Picture and it swept every Oscar category it could have been nominated for. So you would think it would be like this grand epic that everyone loved, but like there were still some criticism of the film even at that time, which is good.
It feels like one of those respected but not loved epics. Like, it's doing the most, and that's I feel like just as the film, that's probably why it won. And I don't know, it's like, congrats on doing the most.
Yeah, I think what certainly helped her is being in the film that was clearly the most beloved of this particular eligibility window.
Yeah,
I think that certainly helped her a lot with the nomination here. We can talk later whether she got close to a win, but I don't know. I don't think there's a lot to discuss as far as like, why was she nominated? Probably because she was in the Best Picture winner of the year, and it was a nice, interesting debut for a lot of people.
Yeah, she was in
like,
the
Irene Dunne.
Very expensive epic, that's why. And
yeah, I haven't seen all of her nominated performances yet. I will get to them, but I would be hard pressed for me to not rank this last from her nominations.
I think I've seen most of them, and this one is definitely last.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I forget that she was even in it because I just know her so well from her comedies.
I know, the whole time I'm like, she kind of looks like a Greta Gerwig if you squint a little. Those are things I was thinking about. It's like part Emma Thompson, part Greta Gerwig. Oh wait, what's happening in this scene? That's what it was for me.
What's the plot?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, well, that's enough of that. Let us move on to Anne Harding for Holiday. So Anne Harding, she was a stage actress for many years, during which she was really praised by critics, again, for her diction.
I read that,
and just, yes, for her stage presence. She was under contract with Pathé, and speaking of actresses being like the answer to another actress, she was apparently promoted as their answer to Norma Shearer.
I mean,
who we will get to in a minute.
We're going to talk about good old Norma there.
Yeah. She was in a film called Her Private Affair, which was apparently a huge box office hit. And then Holiday, it was only her fourth film. So another instance of a very early stage of them being nominated in their career. So this version of Holiday has been completely overshadowed by the remake from 1938 starring Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant. And it's to the extent that that version is in the Criterion Collection, which I just picked up recently. Luckily, it actually comes with the 1930 version here.
Yeah, it's like buried in the supplemental features.
I don't know. I mean, I tried my best to block that remake out of my mind because I just adore Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. Both of them just pure movie stars, full of charisma. I mean, and obviously it hadn't even come out yet, so it's not relevant to this discussion so much.
It's not.
For those who don't know, this film is about a guy named Johnny Case, who is about to marry into this very, very rich family, and he's marrying one of the daughters of the family named Julia, played by Mary Astor, and Julia has a sister, Linda, Anne Harding, who is more of the independent thinker, more free-spirited, a little quirky, which sort of makes her a black sheep, even though she lives with the family in their big mansion, and she attracts a lot of attention. And then Johnny discovers that he has a lot more in common with Linda than he does Julia, which complicates everything. So, Chelsea, I mean, I know that you're a fan of both Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant. I know you watched that version, but what was your take on this one and Anne Harding's performance?
Oh my goodness. Again, it suffers from the decidedly hot Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn remake. And the whole time I was watching, I'm like, dang, this is like the not hot version of this story. I posted privately on my Instagram stories, girl is giving us nothing.
Uh-oh.
I mean, I get it. Her diction was good. It's just...
Love that diction.
We love the diction. She pronounced those words so good.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know. I was just bored watching it. I'm glad it's not too long. It's not the worst movie by any means. But you can see why they remade it and made it a little bit more fun.
Very good point. Because this is not really fun.
Yeah, it's just people standing in rooms talking.
I feel like it's been described as a romantic comedy, and that's not really what I get from this.
Huh. I mean,
yeah.
Technically, yes. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But none of it's really romantic or funny. I did like Mary Astor more. Maybe if she had switched roles with Anne Harding, it would have been a lot more fun because she was giving me something. I actually laughed at some of the things she said. She was interesting. But I don't know, Anne Harding, I'm sorry. You're very pretty.
Oh, wow.
Great gowns, beautiful gowns.
Yeah, there it is right there. This is an interesting one because I think there is something very believable about Anne Harding as just a woman who can hold a conversation about the politics of the day and be sort of a charming party guest, because in the beginning she does have an interesting wit about her, but, you know, there's also something that feels more introverted about Anne Harding as a performer. You know, she's not necessarily the kind of commanding the room star performer like a Katharine Hepburn by any means.
No.
You know, she gives you that fun energy of being like one of the smartest people in the room when she's first meeting Johnny, sort of commenting on what's around her without drawing too much attention to herself. I think she works pretty well in that mode. I was sort of enjoying her up until that point, where I think really eventually the material is just not all that compelling, and it becomes more of the standard romantic melodrama kind of performance.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like the first handful of scenes, they feel kind of promising because I think that's when most of the story is set up. But then afterwards, it's just, like I said, people talking in rooms. And the only performer who, aside from Mary Astor, sometimes who caught my attention was Edward Everett Horton as Nick Potter.
Yes.
When he was telling a story, I was actively interested in what he had to say. And I'm like, oh, maybe you should have been the love interest in this, because I feel like you're giving me something. And I think it does suffer just from Johnny Case being so boring.
Yeah. Sir, you are no Cary Grant. Let me tell you.
No mortal among us is, but come on. Give us at least an eighth of Cary. Come on, something.
Go on, give us nothing is very true of him as well, I think.
Truly giving us nothing. I feel bad that, had this film not been remade, I feel like it'd be completely forgotten. But,
yeah.
I don't know, it's a good idea. And I'm glad that they were able to beef it up later. Because it's a good story, it's a great concept, and it's super fun. It's just... It felt like you were watching a boring play. Maybe it needed more, score or something.
Yeah, certainly a lot of those, plop the camera down for 10 minutes and have them acted out sort of thing. Yeah. I do think she does something really well in her defense, which is to show how she is a forward-thinking kind of woman, and you can tell that, by the things she says and even how she carries herself, and even some of the little, knowing looks that she gives people. It's like she knows that this high society stuff can be kind of frivolous and she's very over it, which is why, she only wants to have these small gatherings with her small group of friends who aren't all snooty and judgmental. And, I think she shows through the way she carries herself more comfortably in that setting that this is where she excels as a social person, and she's not really comfortable with the big extravagant lifestyle of her family, even if she doesn't do much about it herself until the very end when she decides to actually, follow her impulses. So I don't know. I mean, I like that, but then when I'm watching it, I just really gradually start to lose interest in the character and her performance, because she really does have that really traditional sense of the theatricality, and she loses so much of that early spark that she had in the beginning that, yeah, it really is a case where it starts out with such promise, and I'm left by the end being like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess nominate her, sure. I don't know. It's an interesting character, but I don't know if she is bringing the performance to back it up.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, I don't know. I almost feel like I can't judge her as an actress in this in a way, because I'm like, I don't know, maybe better direction or something. She could have had that spark in the first few scenes, like run through, but
yeah.
I don't know. Again, it's hard whenever you saw Katharine Hepburn crush this.
Right. How can you live up to those standards?
I know, even an eighth of Katharine Hepburn. Come on, just a little bit more life.
Even some of the line deliveries feel more stilted. Like, there's one I actually wrote down because I unintentionally laughed at it. Because she's like, this is how she reads this line. She says, "She's worth a try, Johnny." Which just comes out so forced. I don't know. I'm like, girl, what are you doing?
She was hired for her diction, not her acting.
Yes.
She knew
I
how
could
to
hear
say
all
the
of her
words,
lines very well.
every syllable.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think that her moments of quiet are actually some of her best scenes, like when she's first sort of realizing that she might love Johnny and she's on the couch and she has that kind of dazed look in her eyes, like she's a little bit guilty because of how complicated this situation is. I also like when she's talking about why she loves to have parties in that one room because it meant so much to her mother. And even though that's not like a quiet moment, you really do feel some of the pain of what her mother meant to her and her not being around anymore. I think she's able to explore some of that, at least on a deeper level, but I just have to be honest, I don't think she has enough screen presence for this.
I really don't. Again, just swap roles with Mary Astor. I feel like she'd be better as maybe the snooty sister. And Mary Astor, we've seen her do so many great things after the fact, and she had way more life to her.
I can appreciate some of the sort of melancholy feeling that she brings to the character, because that feels like something different than how another actress might play that. But then it's just, the traditional theatricality thing takes over. And yeah, I don't really see how she's considered like outstanding here, like the Academy thought she was. I also just don't think she has any chemistry whatsoever with Robert Ames, who plays Johnny.
I don't think he has chemistry with anybody. I didn't want to blame that on the actresses, but I just kept forgetting about him as a character, even though he's like he's like the central character, the conflict of the story.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in the same boat in terms of like, yes, I'm just trying to focus on Anne Harding, but like he had no impact for me, even though he's supposed to be a co-lead.
Supposed to be.
But I agree, Mary Astor, she gave us a little bit of spark, and she did it all throughout the film. So maybe you're right. Maybe they could have swapped roles. I mean, I do think Anne Harding as an actress probably is more suited to roles that are like, I'm trying to figure out exactly how to phrase it because it's very specific. But it's like, she's kind of the wife who's back home, who's being jilted.
You know what? Let's swap Irene Dunne and her in their films.
There we go.
And I feel
God.
well, we'd have something great. One, we wouldn't have to watch Cimarron, but then this movie would be way more fun. Also, I think they just don't look alike as sisters, so we could just cast anybody.
That's true. You really solved the puzzle there. So
I'm really trying to solve all the problems of the 1930-31 here.
Yes. I couldn't find a whole lot of reviews for this, but I did read one from the New York Times that is like not exactly the best praise, but I guess it's something. They say, she is graceful. She has the boyish manner suggested by the role.
I mean, sure. Go off, girl.
And they say that she had a melancholy sentiment, which is true.
That is true.
Yeah. I just wish it was a little less melancholy.
It just needed way more fun.
I wish she had more fun with the role.
Yeah.
I think that's what it comes down to. Any other thoughts on Anne Harding? Do you actually want to talk any about the remake? I know you watched it or rewatched it. I don't know if you've seen it before.
Oh, I'd seen it before. I bought this.
Okay.
I bought the Criterion, I think last November sale, and I remember Holiday was like the last movie I watched of 2020. I went out on a bang. Wow. I know.
Beautiful.
And there is something so nice about two hot people being hot and fun together, and Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn are such movie stars in the best possible way in Holiday. I love it so much. I cannot believe I have watched 2 versions of this and completely forgot one of them already.
Yeah, I pretty much will co-sign that. I had watched it for the first time, actually, for this show, back when I was doing Best Picture. Not that it was nominated for Best Picture, but I just wanted to watch it.
I don't even remember that year, but
should have been.
Yes.
Yeah, that was 1938.
Oh, then definitely,
so
yeah.
They could have found room. Anyway, let's move on to our final losing nominee, Norma Shearer, for A Free Soul. So we officially have our first returning Best Actress winner, Miss Norma Shearer. She won the year before for The Divorcee. She was also nominated for Their Own Desire last year, so A Free Soul is already the 3rd film that she's been nominated for after only 4 years of the Oscars. Very impressive. We sort of explored it on the last episode. She was basically the queen of MGM at the time, married to Irving Thalberg, who was the head of production there, so
yeah, can't imagine why she would thrive. Can't imagine why.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, right at the top of the list, getting all these great parts. And this is another juicy part, based on a play, which is based on a novel. I'll say that this film does feel like a bit of an extension from The Divorcee and Their Own Desire in terms of the kind of characters she's playing. Upper middle class, popular, flirty, spunky, has a strong relationship with her father. Also is like very much a contemporary woman, very enlightened. So it's very much giving the people what they already like from Norma Shearer, which are these modern women who are just sexually liberated and taking charge of their lives. But I do think that this is somewhat evolved from The Divorcee and Their Own Desire. So in A Free Soul, she plays Jan Ash, who is the daughter of a defense lawyer, Stephen Ash, played by Lionel Barrymore, and he is defending a gangster named Ace, played by Clark Gable, who does not have a mustache in this film. Just saying.
It's very jarring.
It's distracting.
I know.
But Jan develops a romantic connection with Ace because he's Clark Gable, even though she's engaged to a guy named Dwight, played by Leslie Howard. So there's a love triangle aspect, but there's also Jan having to deal with her father's drinking problem, which is causing him to really be estranged from the rest of the family, and she's helping him work through that. But then he relapses, and it's a whole mess, and things take a very dramatic turn towards the end, where there's murder and big speeches and a trial. It's a lot. It really escalates very quickly. So,
yeah.
Chelsea, first of all, what is your take on Norma Shearer as an actress before we launch into this performance?
Oh my goodness. My take is very much also how I feel about this. I think she's great as the sexually liberated woman in her comedic scenes. It just feels so natural, the witty banter. But whenever it is more dramatic, I can watch the gears turn. I'm watching her make acting choices. It's like, this is what I'm gonna do next with my hand, and I'm gonna act shocked in this. So I'm not a fan of her when she's trying to be dramatic, but whenever it's just fun and witty, I think she excels at that. So I'm mixed positive.
It's very funny that you say that, because I basically expressed the same thing on the 3rd episode, which you have not heard.
I have not.
But it really is like a case where we can talk about actresses like, Katharine Hepburn and Greta Garbo, and I guess Marlene Dietrich here too, where they have just this really effortless charisma to them. And it's like they were just obviously born to do this. They were always going to become these great, iconic actresses. And then you have someone like Norma Shearer, who you feel a little more effort.
There's definitely a lot of effort, and in particularly this film, which is a wild story, a real roller coaster.
It really is.
You see a lot of her effort across the board.
Yes. And I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily to be someone who worked very hard to develop her skills, because I think she is a very good actress. It's just not the same thing as some of the others that I mentioned.
For my Drag Race fans, Norma is like Jan Sport, and she just really, really wishes that she was a Simone or a Jada Essence Hall, where it was effortless, but she's not, and that's okay.
And here she's literally playing Jan.
Yep, literally.
Wow. So, yeah, I'm just like, that. What a comparison. I wasn't ready for it. But I wouldn't have given her the win for the performances that I talked about last episode, because she doesn't always grab me, like I said. But here, I do think she's very good, and probably the best of her so far in tracking her nominations. I think she is the most comfortable that she's been so far in any of the talkies that she did in this era. Very naturally works in this typecast that I talked about last time too, of specifically the daughter of a wealthy family. Like, it's a very strange typecast, but it's like she's still also, it's not like she's unapproachable. You feel like you could have a conversation with her, and maybe she's not like the life of the party, but she's fun and she's popular, and I don't know, she just has an approachability to her, even though she is also an heiress. Basically, like, that's what I envision for Norma Shearer as how people wanted to typecast her at this era.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Definitely makes sense. It's just, I feel like they found something she was okay at, and then they just ran with it for a bunch of films, and then she progressively gets slightly better and better and better. I was really into her performance for the most part up until Sobriety Camp. And that's where I feel like they took away what made her interesting, and then it just devolved into more about the men and less about her.
A lot is asked of her in this, and I will slightly disagree in the sense that I do think she handles the dramatic material better than those other films, at least. I mean, the light stuff at the beginning where she gets to be spunky and flirty and sort of vivacious, I think that just fits her like a glove, like you said. I think her energy with Clark Gable is really, really strong. I know there's some divisiveness about Clark Gable, and he's obviously playing like a terrible person here, but still, I can see why this would be like a star-making performance for him. I'm just saying.
Oh, for sure. He's a handsome guy that can be very charming, and I don't like him like in real life. He seems like kind of a jerk, but
Right, exactly.
But like on screen, he does have great charisma and chemistry, even though, again, the mustache really does a lot. And seeing him without it, it was just like, I'm looking at a baby right now. But no, it's just,
pretty much.
I think the film is doing so much on that second half that I feel like it loses her a little bit. And I almost wish that she was centered more around the conflict than just these dudes.
I mean, this is really kind of a tangent, but it's so funny looking at the names of these characters, where Clark Gable is playing Ace, who is this like dangerous gangster who also has like this bad boy charm to him. So he's Ace. And then you have Leslie Howard, who is like the straight-laced goody two-shoes, and his name is Dwight.
And yet he's a handsome fella.
He is. Yes. Like, what's wrong with him? Like, maybe he's not like a Clark Gable type, but like I am almost watching this film and being like, did you really have to stray from him? I don't know.
It's like, I don't see why. I mean, I guess she's attracted to the danger, another free soul, if you will. Doesn't want to be tied down, sure.
Right.
But also, Leslie Howard, I feel like she could just do whatever she wanted and he would not care.
Clearly.
Yeah.
That's clear till the very end of the film.
The very end. He seems like a pretty alright dude.
And he will do anything for her. Pretty much.
There you go.
Like, genuinely anything.
Truly. Like,
as we see
went
later.
a little too far, maybe.
Yeah. Definitely escalates quickly, like I said. But I do think she has pretty great chemistry with the both of them. I mean, it's clear that she's supposed to be a little distant and sort of sexless with Leslie Howard, which is why they separate. But then by the end, I do think there is some nice sort of open body language between the two of them. So I think you still feel that there's a little bit of love there that maybe could turn into passion if she wanted to, but it's probably not going to happen. It's definitely an interesting parallel with Morocco, where you definitely have this guy who will do anything for her. And I mean, there it's such an extreme that Marlene Dietrich doesn't care about him at all. Whereas here, I do think it's a little more nuanced, which I like.
Definitely way more nuanced of a triangle if we're comparing the two. And yeah. And I think she does have chemistry, like, with both of them, even though, like, they try to water down the Leslie Howard chemistry. But honestly, two pretty people together is very hard, especially in this time.
One of the highlights of the film for me is the scene around, like, the early middle where she's at Clark Gable's place and he brings up her father's drinking, and then she just very subtly says in this way, she just says, "That's not nice." And I like the way she handles that scene because she plays it like, you know, everyone always talks about her father's drinking problem, and even she knows that it's a problem, but I think there's part of her that wants to just sort of pretend it doesn't exist. I think she plays that scene very well.
Oh, for sure. Again, that's where she brings a little bit more subtlety to it. It just felt like she was actually defending him in a way, but not making a big deal of it. And I don't know, I really like those little moments.
Yeah. And then also in that same scene, it ends in this very pre-code way. I don't know if you recall, but probably wouldn't have been allowed by the Hays Code, where she's really wanting to get it on with Ace. And she's got her arms out in this kind of like hugging gesture, and she's like wiggling her fingers at the same time. And there's just like this pure lust in her eyes. It was actually made into a GIF. You can search it.
Oh, beautiful. I need to find this. Because again, the first half of this, there is so much sexuality, and I'm like, dang, we love a pre-code right now. What she gets away with, you're like, they are totally sleeping together this entire time. Good for them. Whereas like just a few years later, they wouldn't be able to like stand too close, it seems.
Someone would have to break out the ruler.
Exactly. Leave room for Jesus.
Yes. I mean, like a scene like that could maybe come across as like a little unintentionally funny, but I do think she plays it really well, and you really feel that sexual tension between them in that moment. Which, again, in a few years, that would probably go away.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also the big, huge emotional scene right before sobriety camp, as you call it, where her father realizes that she's with Ace, and they have this big argument, and it's a very dramatic scene with crying and arguing, and very much a showcase for her. And I have to admit, I thought while I was watching it, oh God, here we go, because, you know, in her other films, she has these big scenes like this that just... a lot of effort, and it doesn't always feel authentic. They feel like rehearsed speeches that were just delivered in this very obvious way. here, I mean, she's still got like the tears flowing and she's really like, she's reached this intense emotion, but I didn't think she was super overdoing it in the way that I didn't care for before, except there is that one moment that I did laugh at. I don't know if you remember this, but she's talking to her father about her drinking, or about his drinking, I mean, and how he seemed to be going down the same path as his father. And her delivery on this one line, I wrote it down because it made me laugh again. I'm just always writing down scenes that make me laugh unintentionally.
I love it.
But she like gets up out of her chair and is like, he died in an insane asylum from nothing but drink.
And it's like moments like that would slowly take me out of the film a little bit.
Yeah, which this one did. The way she really punctuates drink.
Again, they were working on their diction back then.
Yeah, and it's very clear.
Very, very.
So, good on you. But I don't know. Other than like moments like that, I think that's kind of what separated this for me from something like The Divorcee or Their Own Desire, that maybe I was just a little more invested in this story. And she's working with a really great scene partner here in Lionel Barrymore. And I think they're able to really complement each other well, where they really feel like father and daughter. So
yeah, I really like their relationship in the film because it did feel like a them two against the world type of parent-child relationship, and just seeing that, and it's like, aw, it's like he was probably like a single dad just going through everything and just trying to let her be her own person, and maybe he wasn't the most equipped person to do it, but I was like, yes, Sobriety Camp made me laugh a little bit because they literally make a deal about it. But oh no, I really like them together. They were great.
I mean, the relationship does sometimes feel like almost dangerously close.
Yeah.
I don't know if you picked up on that.
Definitely wondered for a minute, but then I'm like, no, Chelsea, let's not be weird. Am I putting like a 2021 lens on this? Hopefully not. Hopefully they're just close and not too close.
I mean, she's calling him darling and dear, and they're like kissing on the mouth. I don't know. There's some lines crossed that I didn't care for.
Yeah,
but...
I'm like, man, I hope this is of the time and not just like a casual thing they were doing.
Yeah, but any other thoughts on old Norma here?
You know what? She did a pretty solid job. Not the worst one I watched for this.
Wow. Damning with faint praise.
Yeah.
This quote from New York Times, I do think, sums up the campaign for this film in an interesting way, where they say, Norma Shearer may be the star of this film, but Mr. Barrymore steals whatever honors there may be.
That makes sense.
Yeah. The studio really pushed Lionel Barrymore instead of Norma. Really emphasizing the Barrymore family as this like great family of actors.
I mean, I get it. She had just won, and this is like the era where it feels like they were trying to spread the wealth a little bit more, and he does get what we call now the big Oscar scenes, I feel like.
Yeah.
Like, he just feels like the trailblazer of so many Oscar tropes now. So, I don't mind it. She already has one. She didn't. I don't know.
I almost wonder if there would have been backlash if she won again.
I bet there would have been, just because people are savage, even back then.
I bet Joan Crawford would have had something to say.
She would have had some words, and I would have wanted to hear them.
Yes, because she did not care for Norma Shearer.
Good for her.
Let me tell you. Yeah, people talk about, like, Betty versus Joan. Well, I'm waiting for Joan versus Norma.
Yeah, it's always the other feuds that them two had that are way more interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, like, Joan straight up said that Norma's only getting these roles because she's sleeping with the boss. Like, that's literally what she said.
Exactly, and it's like, is she wrong? Probably not.
Yeah, well, I do think she has the talent to back it up.
She does.
In Norma's defense. She just had a
little bit more privilege than most.
She did.
Yeah.
Like, way more. Yes. Yeah. Well, let's get to our big winner. Marie Dressler in Min and Bill. What a unique winner. We really didn't see a lot of actresses that look like Marie Dressler or even act like Marie Dressler winning Oscars especially in this era of Hollywood. I was looking through it, and they gave Best Actress to so many younger actresses, more classically beautiful, glamorous stars in this era. And it wasn't until 1952, with Shirley Booth winning for Comeback Little Sheba, that we had an older woman winning this category again 2 decades later. But I think it speaks to the power of Marie Dressler as this very unique presence, that she was able to transcend some of that bias within the Academy and within the industry too. I mean, she had a huge career on stage where she really was excelling as a comedy star and having that really broad humor that you can certainly see in her later film work here. She had an up and down career in silent films, working at MGM. She was in a film that we already talked about on this show, The Divine Lady, as the mother of Corinne Griffith. And then when the talkies came around, she was kind of out of work for a while and looking in wanted ads, and she even offered herself up as a nanny. She was just really desperate. But then the screenwriter, Frances Marion, wanted to bring her back, so she landed a great role in Anna Christie, which we talked about last week, where she worked with Greta Garbo, and that's really where Hollywood took notice of her in a more significant way. And she went on to do these really juicy leading roles, and she went on to be the top box office star of the early 30s. So, like, even at the time where people like Norma Shearer and Greta Garbo were at their height, here we have Marie Dressler, who is over 60. She's heavy set. She's like the salt of the earth kind of woman. I just love that she had this unexpected success at the time, and I do think part of it is that she was just relatable.
Definitely, especially during this time where, like, in the Depression era, and I feel like people would probably be resentful of some of the Hollywood glamour, and whenever they see Marie Dressler, it's like, oh, that's relatable. Also, it's funny, but it has some heart. After you got me signed on to this episode, I found the biography she wrote.
Oh, wow.
I did. I bought it. It's very old, and
yes,
she just seems like a super rad lady, like, just doing so much, and then, again, becoming a movie star later in life. I'm so impressed by her. I want to watch more of her films, because, admittedly, I've not seen that many, and I'm like, dang, I'm sleeping on an icon.
She really did have that relatability as this woman in so many of her films, who've been through hardship and maybe doesn't have, like, the champagne problems of the Norma Shearers and the Greta Garbos. And like you said, she could make you laugh, And I think all of her strengths are here in Min and Bill, where she's playing Min, who is an innkeeper who is raising this young woman named Nancy, who was abandoned by her mother at an early age and really taking care of her and wanting to have her have the best future. And she's also dealing with this guy, Bill, played by Wallace Beery, who she frequently argues with. And things start to become more complicated when the mother who abandoned her child comes back, and Min doesn't want her to see her daughter for many reasons. And things, again, escalate very quickly in the end. So what did you think of our winner of this year, Marie Dressler?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I wish this movie was longer, because I was enjoying it. I wish some of the scenes had more time to breathe, though, because it does go through a lot. She is doing this mother type role, but it's actually really interesting, and I want to get to know her a little bit more. And she has so much great energy and gives us a lot. I don't think we really needed Bill too much. He did not need to be in the title of this.
No, he should not be a titular role.
He is not the titular role, but Min.
It's just Min. Just call it Min.
Just Min. But yeah, I was so charmed by this. I watched it twice. I did watch it the first time right after Cimarron. So again, it was merciful. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's like, 66 minutes?
Yeah. It's like 66 minutes. I gave it like 3.5 stars on Letterboxd. That seems fair, just because,
Yeah.
it's nothing incredible, but it does feel like foundational mother story materials that you see actresses today take like one little nugget from and make it into a whole film. Like there is sacrificing, but you understand, and it's oddly nuanced for its time. I don't know. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoy her here. I mean, does she rely on the sort of broad humor, mugging for the camera thing with some of her facial expressions? Maybe. But she's so commanding in this role that I really couldn't take my eyes off her. This was my second time watching this. I watched it for, again, the Best Picture series just to talk about her there. But watching it again, there's such a fierceness to this character and her performance. And when I was watching it, I was thinking about how most films would center on the daughter, and her having this upbringing at the inn and wanting to go off and find adventure out in the world and getting engaged to this rich guy. And, the Marie Dressler type would be the fun supporting character, like the matron role, and maybe we wouldn't get much of her perspective.
Yeah. It almost feels like a reverse Lady Bird where you're following the mother and seeing all the sacrifice at the same time, and you understand it more. But I do like that the daughter figure actually loves men and respects her, even though Men is doing so much tough love, and it is to protect her from her very scammy biological mother. But I was just, again, I was oddly charmed by it all, and I just really like Men.
Yeah, I love that this film centers her in this more traditional sort of scene-stealing, supporting type of character and gives her actual humanity. And, sometimes that can go wrong where, that supporting character works better in small doses rather than as the lead of a film. But here, I do think that she is able to still have that really fun brashness that makes her as a performer fun to watch, but then also to have those really subtle changes in her expressions where, for example, when she's dropping off Nancy at the school and she still has that kind of tough woman armor to her, and she's trying not to get upset about sending her away, but also that sense of selflessness she has, that she's doing it all so that Nancy can have a better life. Those scenes are where I think she really shines, where she's playing more of the complicated, complex emotions.
Yeah, completely agree. It almost reminds me of a Melissa McCarthy and Can You Ever Forgive Me? Where you see the tough exterior and she just lets it down just a little bit, and your heart breaks for her.
Yeah. I mean, there are also the flip side of those kinds of scenes, the big over the top moments, like when she's fighting with Bill and becoming violent almost to a cartoonish level. Are very fun, but also a little scary. I'm just gonna say it. I some of those scenes, she really is wailing on him.
I wonder what comedy is wild back then. People were just beating each other up and calling it funny, and I'm just trying to remind myself the times were different. But yeah, it gets a little too frisky in that respect. Just too many hands thrown.
The scene in the bedroom where there's an axe suddenly being thrown. I'm like, am I watching Looney Tunes? What's happening?
Quite possibly you are.
Yes. But then her final scene is a really big highlight for her, where she's just sacrificed so much for Nancy, and it's escalated to this point of doing away with her mother, and she's on the docks and she's being escorted away, and she has almost this passing smile on her face, which is really bittersweet and something that I think is earned after spending so much of the film in this very serious mode, always in conflict with people. And here it feels like she's sort of reached her goal of giving Nancy a great life, and no matter what happens next, she's gonna be okay.
Yeah, she accomplished her goal. She raised a fine young woman who escaped like, the poverty life that they were living around the docks. Like, she doesn't have to be super working class anymore. It's like she can make something of herself, and it's like, yeah, she raised a pretty good kid, and she should be proud of herself.
Yeah. So it's a performance that I think you can maybe look at it on the surface and be like, oh, I don't know, it's like a little two-dimensional. But I think if you look at it and really study what she's doing, I do think that there is a really interesting complexity that she's bringing to it that, like, only, maybe not only, but especially comedians are able to bring a certain level of pathos to a performance. You know, like a Melissa McCarthy, like you said, when they're doing a more dramatic part and they're able to really break your heart at the same time. So I always love those kinds of performances.
Oh yeah, me too. Again, Melissa McCarthy, maybe she should have had an Oscar for her film. Who knows?
Interesting. Yes. Tough year.
Tough year.
But yeah, this film was a major box office success. The people loved her. They ate her up. And they loved seeing her in this leading role. She was called the Grand Lady of Hollywood, even. So, I mean, she was it.
It made so much money. Like, more money than Cimarron made, for sure.
Yeah. So, take that, Cimarron.
Yeah.
But let's just talk about why Marie Dressler won this, why we think the others couldn't. So, do you think it's just her popularity and this being kind of different compared to the other performances here?
I think it is. It's probably popularity because so many people obviously saw it, but also she does get to do a lot. She gets to be funny, she gets to be dramatic, she gets to have the mother-daughter moments. So I think she just had one of the better parts to work with, and she was recognized for it. She was a very known entity, and I don't know, it just felt like you were honoring a career, but also a popular moment. So.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I have seen this Oscar win described as a career win by some people who say that maybe this is not her best work necessarily, but it just felt like the right time at the right moment. It's about time. Even though she wasn't in, talkies for very long, it's like, she's really put in the work. She's paid her dues. And we want to honor this very unique kind of star. She was, like, hailed as the top box office star, even above people like Norma Shearer. So
yeah, it's just,
I think
you can't deny the money, the popularity, but also we got to remember the Oscars loved popularity. They still do, but especially in the early years, if you were big and popular, like, you can't be ignored, and they like to spread the wealth.
Yeah. This is kind of a strange comparison maybe, but if you look at the first Academy Awards and you look at the performances that Janet Gaynor is giving there, I think that is somewhat similar in terms of, like, someone who is not necessarily, like, full of themselves and glamorous and has this kind of reputation. This is a very authentic kind of performance. And I think the Oscars tend to really like that kind of authenticity.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Totally agree.
I was having fun reading about her reaction to winning the Oscar because this was at a time where, they finally actually just invited the nominees to the ceremony and had it, they didn't know ahead of time whether they won or lost. And she was very surprised, and she has this really great quote where she says, "Like a Model T Ford, I had to be cranked up. I was scared stiff."
And then it has it said where, like, she was announced as the winner, and little Jackie Cooper, whatever his name, Skippy boy, he was just sleeping on her. And it's again, you wish the cameras had been there for that cute moment.
Yeah, exactly. To talk about the losing nominees, do we think it's a case of they had strikes against them, so that's why they lost? Or do we think it's just Marie Dressler was a clear favorite?
Maybe a little bit of both, because, like, you have people like Marlena, who is like, this just feels like an arrival. It's like, congrats, you're in the club now. Irene Dunne, again, it feels more like an arrival. Congrats, you are in a big movie. And then Norma, it's like, let's bring her back in. And then, Anne Harding, you were solid. You were solid in your film. Sure. Also, she was in a lot of movies that year, so you can't ignore it. So they had to pick one.
She was in East Lynne. Yeah.
Yes.
So.
A hidden film.
Which was a Best Picture nominee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the narrative of Marie Dressler made her very appealing to win this. And so I think Norma Shearer you kind of probably count out, even though they do very soon reward Louise Reiner twice in a row.
You have fun with those years. You have fun with that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I talked about them on the Best Picture series,
yes.
And not looking forward to revisiting, but
my condolences.
We'll see if I change my mind. Yes, thank you. It's kind of a similar Cimarron situation, I guess. But Anne Harding and Irene Dunne, I think, were both a little bit too new-ish to really make it happen for them.
It felt like a welcome to the club kind of nomination, right. So I don't know.
Yeah, welcome to the club, except we're never going to actually reward you.
Nope, never, even though you probably deserve it down the line.
Yeah. And then with Marlene Dietrich, I think it's kind of similar, but also maybe wasn't as taken seriously as an actress compared to just her brand, as much as you can say that in 1931. Like, her public image maybe got in the way a little bit.
Sometimes you're just too cool for the Oscars.
Yeah, I think that's probably what affected things for her. So, all right, let's get to some questions from Twitter, shall we?
Let's do it.
This is from Christoph N. Why was this Marlene Dietrich's only Oscar nomination? Did she come close for any of her other performances? Should she have gotten in for other films in her career?
I mean, she should probably have so many more nominations. I'm not confident that she was ever close, just because, we had the Code coming in eventually, and she's honestly just too cool and maybe a little too transgressive for some of it. And also, she was, just part of that bunch of actors that they tried to, blacklist in the late 30s by saying, you're bad at your job. So, I don't know. I would give her so many more nominations, but I don't have a time machine yet.
Right. I do think maybe her personal image, like I said, played a factor in her not being taken as seriously. She was this big style icon. She had a lot of affairs. She was...
with men and women.
She was bisexual, having affairs with men and women, yes.
We see you, Claudette Colbert.
Oh, yeah. But maybe that aspect overshadowed just her talent and any respect she might have had as an actress.
That, and I don't think she cared.
Yeah, she's too cool.
Yeah.
But I think maybe her closest nomination was later on with Witness for the Prosecution, but it's hard to say.
Yeah, I feel like now she would have been nominated for that. It's such a... she's incredible in it. I would have nominated her for it. But it also just feels like the type of role that would be nominated now.
And the thing about that was that she was a star, which means she campaigned in lead, even though she's not the lead of the film. So that definitely cost her, I think.
For sure. I would have nominated her for A Foreign Affair, the Billy Wilder film she did with Jean Arthur. Again, she should probably be in supporting for that one, but she would have campaigned in lead, so...
Well... we got this question from both Fritz and the Oscars and Gabe Guarin asking basically what other films we would have nominated her for. So you kind of said it right there. I will just say Witness for the Prosecution as well. Maybe nominate her the year after this for Shanghai Express, which I also love her in.
Oh, I totally would. I mean, most of her von Sternberg collaborations, I'd be like, sure, why not? It's better than a lot of things that were nominated. Even if they're not perfect films. But yeah, those. And again, A Foreign Affair. Everyone should just go watch that. It's really rad.
Yes. This is from Zeta Short. Where does Morocco rank among Dietrich von Sternberg's collaborations?
Oh, goodness. Let me look at my Criterion box set for this.
Oh, boy.
Again, I'm partial to Shanghai Express for some reason. Yes. I'd say, I feel like Gary Cooper brings that film down several notches for me. It's like middle bottom. But I still like it a lot, so I don't know.
Yeah. I haven't seen them all, but I do think Shanghai Express is certainly a more engaging film and a more compelling performance from her, given more to do. So.
Exactly. And there's so much less Gary Cooper.
Yes, which is a plus on this podcast. This is from Marcel. Which Irene Dunne performance do you think is best / had the best chance of winning?
I mean, do we want to talk about the awful truth?
I mean, to be fair, again, I haven't gotten to all of them yet. I'll be watching a lot of them soon, which I'm excited for. But yeah, as of now, I think The Awful Truth is certainly the crowning achievement from what I've seen.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. It's like The Awful Truth was the same year as The Good Earth. So it's like I definitely would have awarded, honestly, any of those 4 over Louise Rain or whatever. That's just,
correct.
Good Earth sucks. But, I don't know, that's probably the one I would go for the most.
Yeah, and I would guess that was probably the closest she came to winning, though I could also see it happening this year with Cimarron.
Yeah, I mean, again, I did say I watched Theodora Goes Wild during this, and it would not have been like my winner of the 5, maybe, but it's like my second or third place. Again, Louise, girl, I'm not the biggest fan.
Looking forward to that. Fritz and the Oscars, we already answered this, but do you prefer this holiday or the 1938 version? Definitely 1938.
Obviously, hot people rights right there.
This is from Andrew Carden. Do you prefer Harding's Turn in Holiday or East Lynne?
You know what? I'll just say East Lynne. The parts of it I have seen on YouTube that are available.
Right. I did watch East Lynne for the Best Picture series, at least the version that exists online, and I genuinely don't remember that performance.
Yeah. Poor Anne Harding. I hope she was nice. I hope she was a nice person. I'd feel so bad crapping on her.
I don't remember what she did specifically, but, you know, it's more dramatic. I would imagine it's more suited to her style, but again, can't remember it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say East Lynne.
She's very much the her Arrested Development type person for me in this category.
Yeah.
Her?
And her name is Anne.
Yep.
Wow. Look at all these connections.
So many connections.
Okay, I love this question. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this. This is from Owen Daly. Who, if any, do you think are contemporary versions of the women of this category?
Oh my goodness. I wish I had read this beforehand to be prepared.
Okay, so I did, so I have notes.
Okay, good. I'm just gonna run with this. Marie Dressler.
Okay.
Maybe Melissa McCarthy, like I said earlier. Got the comedy, you got the drama, you got the silly slapstick. I'm pretty sure she beats up Jason Bateman in a movie.
Yes.
What about you?
True. That is someone I wrote down for Marie Dressler. Absolutely. The other one I thought of is actually Frances McDormand, you know, someone who really reached the prime of her influence in the industry at an older age, you know,
and can do the comedy and the drama and can be an angry mother. Yes. I see it.
And doesn't have like the traditional glamour, but people sort of love her for it.
Yeah.
You know? I would like to see Marie Dressler in Nomadland.
Oh, she would rule. She'd be like, what in the world are all these cameras? But sure.
Yes. Yes. Irene Dunne is tough. Someone very capable of both comedy and drama, you know, not easy to pin down, I would say. The person I wrote down for this is Amy Adams.
I can see that.
I mean, Amy Adams has more of like a sweetness to her, but, you know, very versatile, collecting a lot of nominations, but never winning. Always reliable, you know, has a few iconic performances, mostly likes to keep to herself, you know, doesn't really get involved in the public drama. So
I don't know, maybe Emma Thompson, because I think they kind of resemble each other. Again, they do the comedy, they do the drama, they do some period piece and some wacky makeup.
Yeah, exactly. For Anne Harding, I really struggled, but when I was watching it, I don't know if you picked up on this, too, but she kept reminding me of Lily Rabe.
Yes, I can see the resemblance physically.
Yeah. Very similar face structure.
I'm just trying to think of a contemporary actress who's recently given me nothing.
I could say something, but I don't want to make people mad.
Oh, you should say it.
Maybe the Felicias of the world. As we like to say, our Felicity Jones, our Alicia Vikanders.
You know what? I can see it. I've enjoyed them in some performances, but also you just forget they're in so many things.
I think they're pretty decent, but like I'm not ever really wowed by them personally.
Yeah, you're never seeking them out, but they just happen to show up.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, you're in this. We'll see what you do. Okay. Sorry, that sounded really mean, but it's just how I feel. Who else? I mean, Norma Shearer, that's really tough.
That is difficult. I'm just gonna scroll.
It feels like you have to have someone who has like industry connections and like maybe is benefiting from nepotism. I don't know.
I'm like trying to think. Like we're literally talking about nepotism on Twitter today.
Right. Yeah.
Be too mean to say Ben Stiller.
Oof. I couldn't really think of one for Norma.
Yeah, nobody really matches her energy so much.
Yeah. Here's my favorite one, though. You have to go with me on this, because it's not a perfect match.
Okay.
But for Marlene Dietrich, it's tempting to go with an actress who just, like, came to America by storm. Maybe someone with, like, a powerful energy, like Cate Blanchett or something. Mm-hmm. But then I thought of someone, and like I said, I'm going to try to make it work. Jennifer Lopez.
You know what? I see this because you just have oozing charisma star, and you're just so intrigued by their life. Like we're currently in the times of what is this the Jenny from the Block 20-year reunion, like conspiracy theory times.
Yes.
And just doing so much work internationally and just always popping up and never gets their due.
Yeah.
I was going to say Lady Gaga.
Okay. I like that.
They both sing beautifully. I would love to see her sing like Shallow.
In the Shallow, yes.
Just oozes charisma, queer icons only.
Yes, bisexual rights.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Feels like, you know, like a singer turned actress could be the Marlene Dietrich.
It just somebody with that has complete star power to them.
Fashion icon.
Yeah.
Yes. But then the one thing for me with Jennifer Lopez, though, is that it's someone that people don't always take seriously as an actress.
That is so true.
Which I think explains the Hustlers snub, for example. And then, you know, Marlene Dietrich, she only gets this one nomination, and maybe she wasn't ever nominated again for similar reasons. You know, people had weird baggage towards her.
Yeah. Obviously, it has to be any of these pop stars that are just doing everything that make people uncomfortable.
Exactly. Yes. Fun question.
That was great.
Wow, we have like 5 more. Lots of questions. Okay. Fritz and the Oscars. Norma Shearer became the first Best Actress winner to be back. Yay or nay?
I mean, honestly, of this lineup, yay. Get it, girl.
Yeah. I say yay.
Yeah.
I'll defend Norma here. I don't want to be too mean to Norma. I feel like she gets beat up on a lot.
She gets beat up on. It's like, yeah, sure. She had that privilege, but hey, she trained. She did some good stuff.
She worked her ass off. Even though she did have a lot of privilege, she did not take it for granted. So
she had to carry so many films, y'all.
We'll be talking about her quite a few more times on this show in the 30s. So, Ben Miller. If Dressler doesn't win in this year, does she win in 1931? I think they mean 1932, because that's for Emma, which we'll be talking about next week. I think it's pretty likely that she does, especially because, again, major box office success.
She's such a movie star and like so hard to ignore.
And if you want to say this was a career win for her, then it would have been for Emma, I would guess.
Yeah, I don't think Men in Bill was a career win. I just think it was a win-win.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. This is from Fritz and the Oscars. Marie Dressler, the most unlikely movie star of all time.
Oh, goodness. Unlikely? I don't know. We never underestimate. There are so many movie stars out there that I'm like, huh, sure, okay.
Of all time is a big claim.
It is of all time. Again, Gary Cooper was a star somehow when Cary Grant was right there.
Yeah, you make a fair point there.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Steve. No, not that Steve. The other one. Oscar had a stretch of honoring actresses who played mothers who went to extremes to give it all up for their kids. Dressler, Helen Hayes for The Sid of Madeline Claudette, Barbara Stanwyck for Stella Dallas, Joan Crawford for Mildred Pierce, etc. How does Dressler compare to the others?
If I'm not mistaken, Dressler's before all these listed other gals. So
she is. I guess she's the one that started it all.
She's the trailblazer. We gotta have some respect on her name.
Exactly. I mean, if you were to compare that to those performances, I would say she doesn't have that, like, traditional beauty or the youth to her. And in that way, she feels more like the kind of real world person who you would meet in real life. But you also see someone who's more willing to go more broad and comedic with Marie Dressler, which certainly separates her from those, which are entirely dramatic.
Yeah.
And comedy is very subjective. Her acting style is maybe divisive, but it's still very distinct. You know, you won't forget her, I think. So
yeah, agreed.
Final question from Jackson DeStefano. This is truly a wild question.
Oh boy.
Okay. So, when reporting on the Best Actor and Actress winners, United Press described them as two veterans of stage and screen who are neither beautiful nor handsome. Do you think the Academy should give more Oscars to ugly people?
I mean, I might win one, but sure.
Come on.
I guess looks are subjective then, because I don't think they're ugly people. I think they're very attractive human beings. They're just not maybe traditionally attractive, but sure.
As Cate Blanchett would say in the movie Carol, we're not ugly people, Harge. So there you go.
It all comes
Beauty
back...
is in the eye of the beholder.
Exactly. It all comes back to Cate Blanchett.
I mean, I'll spin this and I'll say that the Oscars should be more open-minded in the kinds of people they reward. It shouldn't just be the glamorous movie stars who have beautiful, traditional good looks and are white, you know?
Yeah, definitely. It shouldn't just be a bunch of young ingenues. Like, what was it this year? We had Carey Mulligan, Vanessa Kirby, like two very, very attractive youthful people, right. And I am just like, yeah, Fran, she did it. Good for her.
Right. Yeah.
Like, normally we just get our 20-something, early 30s winner, and I'm like, yeah, let's just reward other people and maybe not some white people soon.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. Halle Berry can't be our monolith, y'all. No. Like, she needs company.
It has been 20 years.
Too long.
Wild.
We've had the opportunities.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our final segment. It's time to give our verdict on which of these losing nominees we think was the runner-up to Marie Dressler. All right, Chelsea, what do you think? Who is it? I think this is actually kind of a tough call.
This is very difficult because, again, I think they were into the spreading of the wealth these early years, so I don't think it would be Norma. I don't know. And I don't think they were going to give Cimarron that many more awards because it's like it already like won 3. They're not going to give it a 4th. This is like the first time they gave it more than 2 Oscars to a film. This is wild. Maybe. I think Anne Harding could have been. Just because she was in a bunch of other things. She was in a Best Picture nominee. I think she could have been. I hope not. But I think she could have been.
Okay.
Like, Holiday was also nominated for screenplay.
I went into this honestly discounting her.
Oh, we really should.
Yeah, in terms of her even being a runner-up.
Yeah.
Because I don't really see, like, if there was a narrative, like, what that would be.
Yeah, girl is giving us nothing.
You know? Yeah. So, the two that I really don't think it was Anne Harding and Norma Shearer.
Yeah.
Again,
like, I can't
Norma
see
Shearer,
why it's Norma.
She's probably last.
Yeah.
But I do think it's between Irene Dunne and Marlene Dietrich here.
Oh, get my hopes up. It's tough to say. I feel like it was probably a very close second. Like, I feel like Marie Dressler is probably runaway number one for people, but...
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even, like, decided as I'm talking about it, because I think it very easily could have been one or the other. I think just in terms of dominating her film more, that I'm more inclined to say Marlene Dietrich.
I would hope so, just because, like, it got in for director and, art direction and cinematography? Yeah. It's like they could have given the film something, and she would have been a great winner. Also, that means she would have been a winner. So my heart goes with her. But I fear it could have been Anne Harding, just because she was in a Best Picture nominee.
Yeah. I still think it could have been Irene Dunne. I mean, it's very clear that they loved her. They gave her 5 nominations in her career. Not that they ever gave her the win.
Never.
But in a Best Picture winner, certainly, rises everyone else's chances.
It's hard to argue that. I'm just like, would they have spread the wealth that much? Who knows?
Yeah, that role, though, I just think it's a little too limited to come close. Which is why I'm just going to go ahead and maybe do a little bit of wishful thinking and say Marlene Dietrich.
People can't see me, but I'm just like throwing my arms in the air like, yay! We're the deciders. It was Marlene, y'all.
Boom. And who would you have voted for?
I was like mentally ranking them as we were talking. So this is, I would have probably like Chelsea today voted for Marlene. Come on. But I don't want to be the person that takes away Marie Dressler's Oscar. So Marie would have been my number 2. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Norma.
But you still would have voted for Marlene.
I would have. That's just, I can't deny. I love her. And she only got the 1 nomination.
True. This would have been the time, obviously.
Yeah.
I think for the first time, I agree with the winner of Best Actress. So Marie Dressler would have gotten my vote as well.
Yeah.
I think she brings something entirely different and new and exciting and authentic to this performance that I really would have wanted to see rewarded, and I'm glad that she was.
I am really glad she has an Oscar. I will say that.
Yes,
I'm so glad. I don't want to be the person to take it away. Even though I love Marlene. Right. It's like, nominate her, maybe the next year. Give it to her the next year for Shanghai Express.
Yeah. In my mind, she is taken care of.
Yes.
Down the road. But Marie Dressler, this feels like the right time to do it for her.
She's such a good winner, too. It's just, it feels unlikely now, but she's such the movie star later in life. I just love her narrative so much. And just reading her book, she seemed like a really cool lady.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Chelsea. This was a really fun episode. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was such a fun journey. I'm so glad I didn't have to watch all the Best Picture nominees.
Yes. Thank goodness for that, because this is a bottom tier year for Best Picture.
Oh, yeah. I look at that and I'm like, oh, absolutely not.
Where can people find more from you on the internet?
I am Chels725 on Twitter. I do the Untitled Cinema Gals Project, a nice movie podcast. And then I am the editor and sometimes co-host of the Community Rewatch podcast. We covered Mythic Quest, the comedy, over the summer, and we had some of the performers from the show on, so go check that out. That's me.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin_Jacobson, and the podcast is at Oscar Runner-Up on Twitter. I'm on Instagram at AndTheRunnerUpIs. Rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you liked what you heard and want to hear more, go to patreon.com/AndTheRunnerUpIs, where you can hear a bunch of bonus episodes, including a few with Chelsea here, for a small monthly fee. So next week on the show, we are down to 3 nominees, and the nominees were Marie Dressler, here she is again, for Emma, Lynn Fontaine for The Guardsman, and Helen Hayes in The Sin of Madeleine Claudette. And Helen Hayes was our winner. So that is what to watch, your homework for next week. And with that, I will bid you all adieu.